From the Ego and Its Own by Max Stirner, 1845, translated by Stephen Byington, 1907. The best state will clearly be that which has the most loyal citizens, and the more the devoted mind for legality is lost, so much the more will the state, this system of morality, this moral life itself, be diminished in force and quality. With the good citizens the good state too perishes and dissolves into anarchy and lawlessness. Respect for the law. By this cement the total of the state is held together. The law is sacred, and he who affronts it a criminal. Without crime no state. The moral world, and this the state is crammed full of scamps, cheats, liars, thieves. Since the state is the lordship of law, its hierarchy, it follows that the egoist, in all cases where his advantage runs against the state's, can satisfy himself only by crime. The state cannot give up the claim that its laws and ordinances are sacred. At this the individual ranks as the unholy, barbarian, natural man, egoist, over against the state, exactly as he was once regarded by the Church. Before the individual the state takes on the nimbus of a saint. Thus it issues a law against dueling. Two men who are both at one in this, that they are willing to stake their life for a cause, no matter what, are not to be allowed this, because the state will not have it, it imposes a penalty on it. Where is the liberty of self-determination then? It is at once quite another situation if, as in North America, society determines to let the duelists bear certain evil consequences of their act, such as withdrawal of the credit hitherto enjoyed. To refuse credit is everybody's affair, and, if a society wants to withdraw it for this or that reason, the man who is hit cannot therefore complain of encroachment on his liberty. The society is simply availing itself of its own liberty. That is no penalty for sin, no penalty for a crime. The duel is no crime there, but only an act against which the society adopts countermeasures, resolves on a defense. The state, on the contrary, stamps the duel as a crime, as an injury to its sacred law. It makes it a criminal case. The society leaves it to the individual's decision whether he will draw upon himself evil consequences and inconveniences by his mode of action, and hereby recognizes his free decision. The state behaves in exactly the reverse way, denying all right to the individual's decision and, instead, ascribing the sole right to its own decision, the law of the state, so that he who transgresses the state's commandment is looked upon as if he were acting against God's commandment. A view which likewise was once maintained by the Church. Here God is the holy in and of himself, and the commandments of the Church, as of the state, are the commandments of this Holy One, which he transmits to the world through his anointed and lords by the grace of God. If the Church had deadly sins, the state has capital crimes. If the one had heretics, the other has traitors, the one ecclesiastical penalties, the other criminal penalties, the one inquisitorial processes, the other fiscal. In short, the sins, here crimes, there inquisition and here, inquisition. Will the sanctity of the state not fall like the Church's? The awe of its laws, the reverence for its highness, the humility of its subjects, will this remain? Will the saint's face not be stripped of its adornment? What a folly, to ask of the state's authority that it should enter into an honorable fight with the individual, and, as they express themselves in the matter of freedom of the press, share sun and wind equally. If the state, this thought, is to be a de facto power, it simply must be a superior power against the individual. The state is sacred and must not expose itself to the impudent attacks of individuals. If the state is sacred, there must be censorship. The political liberals admit the former and dispute the inference. But in any case they concede repressive measures to it, for, they stick to this, that state is more than the individual and exercises a justified revenge, called punishment. Punishment has a meaning only when it is to afford expiation for the injuring of a sacred thing. If something is sacred to anyone, he certainly deserves punishment when he acts as its enemy. A man who lets a man's life continue in existence because to him it is sacred and he has a dread of touching it is simply a religious man. Reitling lays crime at the door of social disorder, and lives in the expectation that under communistic arrangements crimes will become impossible, because the temptations to them, such as money, fall away. As, however, his organized society is also exalted into a sacred and inviolable one, he miscalculates in that good-hearted opinion. Such as with their mouth professed allegiance to the communistic society, but worked underhand for its ruin, would not be lacking. Besides, Reitling has to keep on with curative means against the natural remainder of human diseases and weaknesses, and curative means always announce to begin with that individuals will be looked upon as called to a particular salvation and hence treated according to the requirements of this human calling. Curative means or healing is only the reverse side of punishment. The theory of cure runs parallel with the theory of punishment. If the latter sees in an action a sin against right, the former takes it for a sin of the man against himself, as a decadence from his health. But the correct thing is that I regard it either as an action that suits me or as one that does not suit me, as hostile or friendly to me, that I treat it as my property, which I cherish or demolish. Crime or disease are not either of them an egoistic view of the matter, a judgment starting from me, but starting from another, namely, whether it injures right, general right, or the health partly of the individual, the sick one, partly of the generality, society. Crime is treated inexorably, disease with loving gentleness, compassion, and the like. Punishment follows crime. If crime falls because the sacred vanishes, punishment must not less be drawn into its fall, for it too has significance only over against something sacred. Ecclesiastical punishments have been abolished. Why? Because how one behaves toward the holy God is his own affair. But, as this one punishment, ecclesiastical punishment, has fallen, so all punishments must fall. As sin against the so-called God is a man's own affair, so is that against every kind of the so-called sacred. According to our theories of penal law, with whose improvement in conformity to the times people are tormenting themselves in vain, they want to punish men for this or that inhumanity, and therein they make the silliness of these theories especially plain by their consistency, hanging the little thieves and letting the big ones run. For injury to property they have the house of correction, and for violence to thought, suppression of natural rights of man, only representations and petitions. The criminal code has continued existence only through the sacred, and perishes of itself if punishment is given up. Now they want to create everywhere a new penal law, without indulging in a misgiving about punishment itself. But it is exactly punishment that must make room for satisfaction, which, again, cannot aim at satisfying right or justice, but at procuring us a satisfactory outcome. If one does to us what we will not put up with, we break his power and bring our own to bear. We satisfy ourselves on him, and do not fall into the folly of wanting to satisfy right, the spook. It is not the sacred that is to defend itself against man, but man against man, as God too, you know, no longer defends himself against man, God to whom formerly, and in part, indeed, even now, all the servants of God offered their hands to punish the blasphemer, as they still at this very day lend their hands to the sacred. This devotion to the sacred brings it to pass also that, without lively participation of one's own, one only delivers bestowers into the hands of the police and courts, a non-participating making over to the authorities, who, of course, will best administer sacred matters. The people is quite crazy for hounding the police on against everything that seems to it to be immoral, often only unseemly, and this popular rage for the moral protects the police institution more than the government could in any way protect it. In crime the egoist has hitherto asserted himself and mocked at the sacred. The break with the sacred, or rather of the sacred, may become general. A revolution never returns, but a mighty, reckless, shameless, conscienceless, proud crime, does it not rumble in distant thunders, And do you not see how the sky grows presciently silent and gloomy? Reading from George Woodcock's Anarchist Reader. Biographical Supplement. Old Big Brow, or Caspar Schmidt, was born 1806 and died 1856. He taught the Chilens. He was critical of the other young Hegelians with whom he was more or less brothers, although he thought their ideas too spooked to be true. Apparently he had a shit marriage. Why am I not surprised? And became a translator. At one point some Hegelian brothers tried to open a co-op milk joint. Needless to say it cut itself off from its unsharp customers with its extreme edginess and failed. Thanks for watching. I hope Stirner wasn't too spooky for you.